I paid my sister's rent in secret for 2 years. Then she demanded a Tesla, and my dad stole my car, and then When I got the job offer from the firm in Cleveland, I thought things were finally turning around. After years of bouncing between part-time gigs and endless internships, finally stepping into my role as an urban planner at 27 felt like catching my breath after drowning. I wasn't rolling in cash, not even close, but I could breathe, eat something besides chili, and sock away enough to start dreaming of maybe having a future. For once, I wasn't the one falling apart. Then my phone rang late one night, just as I was settling into bed with leftover noodles and a bad sci-fi movie. It was my dad, Harold, and he sounded like someone had died. I sat up, expecting terrible news. Cancer, a car crash, something that would demand everything I had emotionally. Instead, he sighed and said, "Miles, I need to talk to you about something real serious." My chest tightened. He always started that way when he was about to ask for something big. Turns out, the world wasn't ending, just his finances again. My younger sister Callie, 22 and still firmly gripping the crown of our family's favorite, wanted to move into some ultra-modern loft near her art school in Cincinnati. Rent was obscene, way beyond what she could swing with her part-time boutique job, but she deserved it, according to Dad. And, surprise, surprise, he had already promised her he'd take care of it. But the kicker was he couldn't afford it. Not even close. Harold's contracting business had been a sinking ship since 2021. He used to brag about being able to fix anything, roofs, walls, bank balances, but the economy slapped him down, and he'd never fully recovered. Still, he couldn't bring himself to admit defeat to Callie, the daughter he spent most of his life trying to impress. He wanted me to foot the bill, quietly, so he could pretend it was still coming from him. That was the condition. She couldn't know. He needed to preserve her image of him, whatever that meant. At first, I said no without hesitation. Then he hit me with the voice he always used when he wanted something, soft and heavy with guilt. "She looks up to me," he said. "I can't let her see me struggling. You know how she gets." Yeah, I knew exactly how she got. If Callie even sniffed disappointment, she'd start spiraling into one of her princess tantrums. Growing up, everything had revolved around her. If she wanted dance lessons, they found the money. I wanted to play soccer? Too expensive. She got a new tablet for school. I was told to share the family laptop from 2006 with a broken spacebar. Still, I did what I always did. I shoved the resentment down and told him I'd help, for a little while, just until he got back on his feet. The rent was $690 a month, which was almost half of what I paid to live with a roommate in a moldy box of an apartment on the wrong side of Toledo. But sure, I could spare it. Family, right? I started transferring the money to him every month, and he'd pass it on to Callie as if it came from his pocket. I stayed quiet. Callie continued believing her father was a financial wizard who somehow always found a way to spoil her, even when he couldn't keep the lights on in his own place. Months passed, then a year, then another. Every now and then, I'd catch myself scrolling through her Instagram, watching her show off her loft's minimalist furniture, the wall-mounted TV, the weekend trips to Chicago and Nashville. One time, she posted a fridge tour. Yes, a fridge tour, complete with color-coordinated sparkling waters and imported cheese. Meanwhile, I was still eating peanut butter off a spoon some nights to stretch groceries to payday. I didn't say anything. Not when she invited me over and introduced me to her new best friend, Tara, the same Tara who cheated on me with my then best friend a year earlier. Not when Callie sat across from me and said, "Tara's amazing. We've totally clicked. You know, she drives that Stormray Electric? The white one. It's literal art. I want one just like it." She was obsessed with that car. Couldn't stop talking about how it matched her vibe and gave main character energy. And all the while, Tara smiled at me like we were old friends, not people who had destroyed each other's lives just a few months earlier. Callie didn't know what I was sacrificing to keep that apartment. I had stopped going out, let my gym membership lapse, even put off replacing the cracked screen on my phone because I couldn't justify the $90. But every time she needed something, new art supplies, rent bumped up for building improvements, or a little extra for something Harold forgot to budget for, I found a way. What got me wasn't the money. It was how invisible I became in the process. Callie started dating this guy Jace, a wannabe lifestyle guru who recorded motivational rants in her apartment, talking about grinding, manifesting, and being a six-figure mindset. Meanwhile, I was budgeting my lunch down to the dollar so she could host people in a place I was secretly paying for. One night, she laughed about me driving a death-trap Saturn from the Bush administration and asked why I didn't get something normal. Her exact words: "You work in urban planning, right? That sounds important. You should at least drive something that doesn't look like trauma." I didn't respond. I just sat there, chewing overcooked pasta in an apartment filled with lights I'd paid for, while she and Jace toasted to their influencer era. When she started hinting that she wanted the same Storm Ray electric car as Tara, I already knew what was coming. A few weeks later, Harold called again. "She's been talking about that car nonstop," he said, trying to keep his voice light, casual, like we were just two guys figuring out logistics. "You know how she gets when she sets her mind on something. She graduates next spring." I was thinking, maybe we could help with the down payment? He meant I could help. Again, this time to the tune of $7,200. That was the moment something inside me finally cracked. Not like a dramatic snap, more like a slow, bitter splintering. I told him no. He tried guilt. He tried flattery. He tried that same tired line: "She's your sister, family helps family." But I wasn't buying it anymore. I'd sacrificed years of stability, of dignity, to uphold a lie that did nothing but inflate his pride and her delusion. And now, after everything, I was supposed to help buy her a car that cost more than I made in 4 months? A car she'd drive while laughing at the brother who made it all possible? No, not this time. The night after that phone call, I barely slept. My brain kept looping through every time I'd made sacrifices for them. Every time I'd said, "just for now," and convinced myself it was temporary, that things would eventually get better. That lie had been stretching across 2 years now, thin as tissue and just as useless. The truth was, nothing was going to change unless I made it happen. So when my dad sent a text the next morning asking if I'd given any more thought to the car thing, I didn't reply. I let it sit there, unread, like a grenade with the pin already pulled. That weekend, I drove the 2 hours to my parents' house for my mom's birthday dinner. I hadn't been back in months, not since the last time they guilt me into chipping in for Callie's studio renovation, because she'd decided she needed better lighting for her painting classes. Walking into that house felt like stepping into a time capsule of denial. Same peeling wallpaper, same dusty figurines, same tension buzzing in the air like a silent alarm no one acknowledged. My mom, Dana, was already in the kitchen when I arrived, moving like a machine, chopping, stirring, wiping, never really present, just running her program like always. She greeted me with a tight hug and a tired smile, but didn't say much. That was her way, always hovering on the sidelines of the dysfunction, too worn down or too afraid to challenge any of it. Callie showed up late, of course, strutting in like she was returning from a red carpet, acrylics clicking against her phone, new designer handbag slung over her shoulder. She wore this flowy white dress that probably cost more than my monthly groceries, and she didn't even notice the way I flinched when she kissed my cheek and said, "God, you look exhausted." We sat down to dinner around the old oak table, the one Dad always claimed he'd replace, but never did. The food was decent. Mom always managed that, but the conversation was brittle, like everyone was trying too hard to pretend this was just another family meal and not a powder keg. Then, halfway through her second helping of pasta, Callie dropped it like she was announcing a new handbag collaboration. "So," she said, twirling her fork like a wand, "I've decided I'm getting a Storm Ray. The white one with the matte black interior. It's literally perfect. Totally fits my aesthetic." Dad coughed into his water like he'd swallowed a fork. I watched his eyes flicker to me across the table, that silent plea starting to form behind the panic. He was trying to smile, trying to stay cool, but I could see the sweat building at his temple. That's quite a car, sweetheart," he said weakly. Callie just nodded, beaming. "I know, right? I've been manifesting it forever. It's time. I deserve it." I looked down at my plate, trying not to laugh. Her manifesting probably meant leaving Pinterest tabs open while Dad scrambled to make it real. I didn't say a word, didn't even look up until he asked if we could talk in the kitchen after dinner. The moment he said it, I knew exactly what was coming. It wasn't even a question anymore. He pulled me aside like he was delivering bad news from a hospital. "She's got her heart set on that car," he said, voice low like Callie couldn't hear him from 10 feet away. "I told her I'd help with the down payment, but things are still tight. Just the initial payment, that's all. She can handle the rest." I looked at him for a long second, trying to decide if he actually believed what he was saying or if he was just hoping I was still gullible enough to fall for it. "You want me to pay $7,000, I said, "so she can drive around in the same car as the girl who blew up my last relationship." He had the nerve to look embarrassed, like he knew how ridiculous it was, but still expected me to say yes. "Just the down payment. Then she's on her own." "With what money?" I asked. "Her paycheck from folding shirts? The sponsorships she hasn't landed for the Instagram page with 300 followers." He didn't respond. He just gave me that look, the same one he used to give me after one of Callie's meltdowns when I was a kid, silently asking me to fix it without making it worse. I'd fallen for that look more times than I could count. But not this time. "No," I said, and I didn't bother softening it. "I'm not paying for a car she doesn't need and can't afford just so you can keep pretending everything's fine." His face hardened immediately. The shame evaporated, replaced by the steel-eyed anger I remembered from childhood arguments. "She's your sister," he snapped. "Family helps family." "No," I said again louder. "I've been helping for 2 years. I've paid her rent every month. You know what that's cost me." "Keep your voice down," he hissed. "She'll hear you." "Maybe she should," I shot back. "Maybe she should know that her fantasy life has been funded by the brother she treats like an Uber driver." He reached out, grabbed my arm. Not hard, but firm, insistent. "You promised me. You gave me your word you wouldn't tell her." I pulled away from him, heat rising up the back of my neck. "That was before you decided to toss another 5-figure request on top of everything else." We went back to the table in silence, me seething and him trying to pretend nothing had just happened. Callie was now showing my mom photos of her dream car, explaining how it was only $49,000 and would totally change her life. Dad cleared his throat. "Actually, sweetheart," he said, and my stomach dropped. "I was thinking, maybe your brother could help you out with this." Callie blinked, confused. Then she laughed, like full-on snort laughed. "Miles," she said, like the name itself was a joke. "He can't even afford to fix his Honda's window. It rains inside his car. I literally don't think he has a savings account." And that was it. That was the moment I stopped pretending I could hold all this in. "I live in a garbage apartment and drive that struggle bus because I've been paying your rent for 2 years, I said, voice quiet but sharp enough to slice the air in the room. The table froze. My mom stopped mid-sip, fork paused halfway to her mouth. Callie blinked again, stunned. "What? The rent you think Dad's been paying?" I said. "That's me. Every month. For 2 years." She looked at him, expecting a denial. He didn't give her one. "Princess," he said weakly, "I was going to pay him back." Her eyes filled with tears, but not the kind that come from betrayal. They were angry tears. Embarrassed tears. "So you've just been sitting on this? Holding it over me?" "No," I said. I didn't say a word. "Because Dad asked me not to. Because you already treat me like garbage and I didn't think I could take it if you also found out I was funding your fantasy." My mom still hadn't spoken. She just sat there, staring at her plate like if she stared hard enough, maybe she'd vanish into it. "I'm done," I said, standing up. "I'm done being the ATM, the punching bag, the invisible support system. You can figure it out yourselves." Dad stood, too, face red with rage. "If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back." I looked at him, finally seeing him for what he really was. Not desperate, not proud, just manipulative and used to getting his way. "That's fine by me," I said, and I walked out without looking back. The second I shut that front door behind me, it felt like the oxygen in my lungs had changed. Not cleaner, not lighter, just different. I didn't feel relief, not yet. It was more like coming up for air after swimming too deep for too long. You're still underwater, but now you can see the surface, and it's close enough to taste. When I got back to my apartment, I expected the fallout to start immediately, and I wasn't wrong. That night, my phone buzzed nonstop. First it was Callie, her messages swinging wildly between rage and confusion. One minute she was furious that I'd humiliated her. The next she was trying to guilt me with childhood memories about how I used to help her with homework and sneak her extra dessert when she was sad. Then came Dad, in full attack mode. Voicemails, long texts, all variations of the same angry theme. I'd broken my word, betrayed the family, and brought shame on him in front of his daughter. Mom sent one message, just 4 words. Please call your father. No punctuation, no emotion, just more of the same empty, passive silence I'd come to expect from her. I blocked them all the next day. I needed space. I needed to think without being battered from every direction. But peace wasn't what I got. 3 days later, my bank called. A representative asked if I had recently attempted to access my account from a device in Columbus. I hadn't. I barely even left Toledo unless I had to. She said it might be nothing, but something in her voice told me she didn't believe that. After some checking, she confirmed that someone had tried to log in and failed the security questions multiple times. I changed every password I had. Email, bank, utilities, everything. I added 2-factor authentication and froze my credit, just in case. Still, a part of me knew exactly who it was. There weren't many people who knew those security answers. Only family. I wanted to believe maybe it wasn't them. Maybe it was a coincidence. But that illusion shattered less than a week later. I came home from work on a Thursday evening and immediately knew something was wrong. The hallway was too quiet, and my front door wasn't fully closed. It wasn't wide open, just cracked, barely noticeable, but enough to make my stomach turn. I know I locked it that morning. I always double-check. Always. Inside, the place had been hit. Not trashed, not ransacked, but picked through with purpose. My TV was gone. My laptop. The watch my grandfather left me when he died. Even my old PlayStation was missing. Drawers open. Cabinets left half-closed. My documents were untouched. Whoever it was didn't care about my ID or my birth certificate. They wanted items they could flip for quick cash. I called the police immediately, and they arrived within 20 minutes. There were no signs of forced entry. The lock wasn't damaged, nothing was broken, and that meant only one thing. Someone used a key. The only other person with a key to my apartment was Harold. I gave it to him over a year ago when he helped me move in, and I never got around to asking for it back. I called him directly, not even bothering to hold back the fury boiling under my skin. He denied everything, of course. Claimed he hadn't been near my place in months. Then, when I mentioned the missing PlayStation and the pawn shop sticker I found on the inside of my watch box, he paused. Just for a second, but long enough. I was desperate, he finally admitted, and the way he said it, like it explained everything, made my skin crawl. Debt collectors have been calling, and I didn't know what else to do. I was going to return your stuff, I swear. I just needed to borrow it. Borrow, I said, laughing, but there was no humor in it. You broke into my apartment. You sold my things. That's not borrowing. That's theft. He went quiet again, then tried to flip it. You wouldn't understand what it's like to have a family depending on you. I've got your sister living here, a baby on the way, and no one else to turn to. That was when I knew we weren't even in the same reality anymore. I told him if I didn't get my things back or some kind of repayment, I'd press charges. He tried guilt again, said I was heartless, that I didn't care about the family. But I had something I hadn't had before, proof. I had the phone call recorded. I had texts. I had the pawn shop receipts. He must have realized I wasn't bluffing because 2 days later, most of my stuff turned up in a box outside my door. Not everything. My PlayStation was gone for good, but enough to stop me from filing a report. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. A week later, I came outside to find a tow truck parked in front of my building, halfway through hooking up my old Saturn. I ran over, confused, and asked the driver what he was doing. He showed me a repossession order and said I was behind on payments. Which made no sense, because I had bought the car outright 3 years ago and owned it free and clear. Turns out, someone had taken out a title loan in my name for $6,800, using a forged signature and a fake address. When I requested the paperwork from the bank, my stomach dropped. The signature wasn't mine, but it was close. Too close. Dad had forged it. He'd stolen a copy of my title and used it to borrow money without ever telling me. That was the moment something inside me cracked for good. The quiet kind of break. The kind that doesn't make a sound but never heals the same. I had three options: fight it legally and risk sending my own father to jail, pay the loan myself to keep my car, or lose my only transportation. I didn't have the time or emotional energy to go nuclear, so I chose the one thing I could control. I sold the car for a fraction of what it was worth, paid off the debt, and bought a used clunker off some guy on Facebook Marketplace. It looked like it had survived a war, but it ran, and no one else had the keys or paperwork. I hid the new title in a safe deposit box the next day. When Dad found out what I'd done, he called me screaming like I'd burned down his house. "That car was our backup plan," he shouted, like he was the one who owned it. "You should have talked to me first." "My car," I said calmly. "My name. My property. You stole from me. That's the only plan that matters." He hung up after that, but I was already done playing games. I changed my locks. I closed my old accounts. I got a new phone number, started applying for jobs across the state, and moved to a new place under a new lease. No one got my address. No one got my key. I went ghost, full blackout. No family. No calls. No explanations. And for the first time in my adult life, I started to feel safe. Not happy, not yet, but safe. Like maybe, if I stayed quiet long enough, the damage would stop spreading. But peace has a price, and mine wasn't done collecting yet. The silence was disorienting at first, like standing in a room after the fire alarm finally stopped screaming. For weeks, maybe even months, I kept expecting the next punch to land. I braced for another identity theft, another missing paycheck, another manipulation wrapped in a family guilt trip. But nothing came. Just the stillness of no contact, no voicemails, no texts, no late-night calls from blocked numbers trying to sneak past the silence I had finally built. I spent my first few weeks in Dayton with the blinds closed and my phone set to do not disturb. I slept with one eye open, half expecting to wake up and find my apartment door ajar again or my bank account mysteriously emptied. But slowly, reality started to reset. I started sleeping through the night for the first time in years. I got a new job at a smaller planning firm. Less flashy than my old one, but better management, better hours, and for once, no one trying to take advantage of me. I even started going to therapy. That part felt indulgent at first, like something people with extra time and disposable income did just for fun. But after the second session, I realized it was more like cleaning a festering wound I'd been ignoring for a decade. I told the therapist everything about my dad, my sister, the years of being the unacknowledged provider, the fake gratitude, the guilt masquerading as love. She didn't say anything profound at first. She just nodded and asked, "And when did you first feel like your needs weren't allowed to matter?" That question alone nearly broke me. It had always been that way. When Callie wanted something, the world bent to her needs without hesitation. When I wanted something, I was told to wait, to compromise, to be patient, to be practical. I was praised for being selfless, but punished whenever I hesitated to sacrifice myself. Even now, after cutting ties, I felt guilt for it. For choosing my own life, my own sanity. That guilt wasn't just emotional residue. It was a cage I had lived inside for most of my life without even realizing it had bars. The first holiday season after going no contact was brutal. I kept reaching for my phone out of habit, thinking I'd get a text from Mom reminding me to bring wine, or Callie sending another photo of the tree with some overly filtered caption about family vibes. But it was just me. A small tree from a dollar store. A frozen dinner. Silence. And still, it was better. Because no one was stealing from me. No one was asking for rent money or using my name to open new debts. That peace had weight to it, and after a while, I stopped missing the noise. Until, of course, the noise found its way back in. It started with an email from Callie. The subject line was just, "I need you." I almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a long, rambling message written in a tone I didn't recognize. Less smug influencer, more defeated adult. She said she was pregnant, that Jace had ghosted her the second he found out, that she'd lost the apartment once the rent stopped being paid, had nowhere to go, and was living with our parents again. She didn't apologize, not directly. She said things like, "I know we've had our differences, and I wish things had gone differently." But it was clear that the real reason for the message wasn't closure. It was survival. She wanted me to pay for a new apartment. She even wrote, "I'm not expecting anything fancy, just something safe for me and the baby." She included screenshots of studio listings, all way out of her price range, and one last line. "Dad says he's sorry too. We all miss you." I stared at that message for an hour without blinking. I felt nothing at first. Not anger. Not pain. Just a strange sense of confirmation. Like I had finally unearthed the last page in a playbook I'd been forced to follow my entire life. When they needed something, they remembered I existed. When I was drained or broken or finally standing up for myself, I was cruel, heartless, selfish. Their love was a vending machine, and once it stopped spitting out the goods, they kicked it until it worked again. I didn't respond. I marked the email as spam, closed my laptop, and went for a walk around my neighborhood. The cold air felt good, grounding. I passed by couples decorating porches and families yelling at each other over tangled Christmas lights. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel envy. Just quiet gratitude that none of them were asking me for money. Over the next few months, I stuck to my routine. Work, therapy, sleep, repeat. I went out with coworkers once or twice. I even started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but enough to feel like I was allowed to enjoy life again. I bought myself a used Toyota, solid, dependable, no drama. Paid in full with cash I'd saved up now that I wasn't bankrolling someone else's fantasy. Every time I turned the key and the engine started without some weird clicking noise, I smiled like an idiot. It was mine. No title loan. No forged signatures. No strings. And then, almost a year after I walked out of that birthday dinner, I saw my mother in the grocery store. She was standing in front of the apples, reaching for the same kind I was. We locked eyes, and she froze like a deer, unsure if I was going to approach or vanish into the produce section like a ghost. I didn't run, but I didn't say anything either. She broke the silence first. "You look well," she said, her eyes scanning me the way a mother is supposed to, like she was checking for bruises no one else could see. I didn't know how to respond to that. I just nodded and said, "I am well." She looked older than I remembered, worn, like something inside her had collapsed and never quite recovered. She clutched her purse with both hands like it was holding her together. "Your father had a health scare," she said after a long pause. "His heart. It was serious. He's recovering." My pulse spiked for a moment, out of pure instinct. That old programming doesn't die easy. I waited for the ask, for the guilt trip, the plea to come back, the manipulation. But it didn't come. "He's been thinking about some things," she said. "So have I." I asked, against my better judgment, "Is Callie still living with you?" She nodded. "She got a job at the mall. Still struggling. The baby keeps her busy." I wanted to feel something. Sympathy, maybe even sadness. But all I felt was distance. A kind of emotional fog between us that neither of us knew how to walk through. "Good for her," I said, and meant it. She didn't try to touch me, didn't cry or beg. She just stood there like someone who had come to deliver a message and now didn't know what to do with herself. "Well," she said finally, "take care of yourself. You too." That was it. No "we miss you." No apology. Just a final acknowledgement of the space between us and how permanent it had become. A few weeks later, a letter arrived in the mail. Not a text, not an email. An actual letter, addressed in Harold's shaky handwriting. 3 pages. Long, meandering, and full of things I never thought I'd hear from him. He admitted everything. The manipulation, the lies, the stolen money. He said he had taken out more debts in my name than I'd discovered, but that he'd paid them all off. The letter included photocopies of receipts from 3 different credit agencies showing balances paid in full. He said he didn't expect me to come back or forgive him. He just wanted me to know that he finally saw what he'd done and that he was proud of me, for walking away, for protecting myself, even if it had been from him. I sat with that letter for 3 days before I did anything. When I finally responded, it was a short card. I thanked him for clearing the debts. I told him I was doing well. I didn't include my number or address. I didn't open the door, but I didn't slam it shut, either. And then, about a month after that, Callie showed up at my work. I didn't recognize her at first. When she walked through the glass front doors of my office building, she didn't carry herself the way Callie used to, with that entitled, head-high posture that dared people to challenge her place in the world. She looked smaller somehow, like the edges had worn down. Her hair was pulled back messily, and she wore a basic jacket over a faded hoodie, the kind you throw on when there's nothing left in the closet that fits or feels clean. The baby carrier across her chest was the only thing in the picture that looked cared for, pristine, wrapped tight, and clearly her priority. The receptionist called my name over the speaker like she wasn't sure she should have. I walked out into the lobby, feeling that familiar sting of anxiety surge in my stomach, but it passed quickly, replaced by something closer to curiosity. I met her eyes for the first time in a year, and to my surprise, she didn't look angry or ashamed, just exhausted. "I'm not here to ask for anything," she said immediately before I could speak. "I just want 5 minutes. That's all." There was a coffee shop next door, mostly empty except for a few people working on laptops. We sat by the window, not touching, not leaning in. Just two people who used to be family, trying to share air again. She didn't waste time. "I owe you an apology," she said. Her voice cracked slightly, but she kept talking. "A real one. Not that fake. We all made mistakes crap. I was awful to you. I was selfish. I took advantage of you without even knowing I was doing it. And when you finally stood up for yourself, I made you the villain in a story I wrote with no facts." I didn't say anything for a while. I just watched her gently rock the baby, who stayed asleep, unfazed by the tension humming under the table. "You said you weren't here to ask for anything," I said quietly. "I'm not," she replied. "Not money. Not help. I just wanted you to meet him. Your nephew. His name's Mason." She pulled back the cover on the carrier for a moment. He was tiny, wrapped in layers, his face squished into a peaceful sleep. For a second, I felt something pull in my chest. Not quite joy, not quite pain. Something in between, like nostalgia for a version of life that never existed. "He looks like you," I said without thinking. She laughed softly. "That's what Mom says." We sat there a little longer, sipping bad coffee in silence. Eventually, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. "Dad's having surgery in 2 weeks," she said. "Triple bypass. He's scared, but he won't admit it. He'd never ask you to come, but he gave me this in case I saw you. Medical documents, hospital info, that kind of stuff." I took the envelope but didn't open it right away. I just held it between my hands like it might burn. "I'm not here to fix anything," she said again. "I know I don't have the right to ask you for that, but I'm trying to be better. And I thought maybe, if you ever felt like talking, I'd be here. Not expecting anything. Just here." She stood up then, adjusted the carrier over her shoulder, and looked at me one last time. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. Even the stuff I didn't deserve." And then she left. I didn't follow her. I didn't call after her. I just sat there for a long time with that envelope resting in front of me, listening to the buzz of espresso machines and background music, wondering how many versions of this conversation I had imagined, and how none of them looked like this. I waited a few days before opening the envelope. Inside were the surgery details, a short handwritten note from Harold, and, unexpectedly, another check. This one was made out to me. It wasn't for much, but it was labeled, "Final Repayment." I stared at it, wondering if this was another manipulation, another gesture meant to absolve him without effort. But something about the handwriting, less shaky, more intentional, made me think maybe it was different this time. I didn't attend the surgery, but I sent a card to the hospital. I told him I appreciated the letter, that I hoped the procedure went well, that I was still doing fine and didn't need anything. I didn't sign it with love, just my name. Callie and I started texting, slowly and without pressure. She mostly sent pictures of Mason, sleeping, crying, wrapped in a burrito of blankets. I never asked about Jace, and she never offered any updates. It felt like we had an unspoken agreement to leave the past where it was for now. We weren't close. I don't think we ever really had been. But we were, At least, something better than strangers. And that was more than I ever expected. The biggest surprise was how light everything felt afterward, not just in the absence of crisis, but in the shift of how I saw myself. I wasn't angry anymore. Not like I had been. The betrayal still lived in me, but it had changed shape. No longer a wound, but a scar. One I could trace without flinching. One that reminded me I had survived it all and come out the other side with something resembling peace. I bought myself a new couch, real furniture, not a Craigslist special or hand-me-down. I hosted co-workers for dinner, cooked meals from actual recipes, played music that didn't remind me of anyone. I took a trip to Denver by myself and spent 3 days hiking, surrounded by trees that didn't ask for anything. I started writing again, just for me. Nothing about family, nothing about pain, just stories, small ones, about people finding their way back to themselves. Sometimes, late at night, I'd catch myself thinking about how different things might have been if someone had just said sorry earlier, or if I'd learned how to say no when I was younger. But those thoughts didn't haunt me like they used to. They passed like weather, unavoidable, but temporary. I know people like to say family is everything, but I've learned that's only true if your family treats you like something more than a resource. Love without respect is just manipulation with good PR. And forgiveness, real forgiveness, isn't something you give to make someone else feel better. It's something you grow into when you're finally safe enough to let go. I haven't fully forgiven my father. I might never, but I forgave myself for staying too long, for not seeing the red flags, for thinking my worth came from what I could give instead of who I was. That's the kind of forgiveness that actually matters. As for Callie, she's trying. I don't know where our story ends, or if we'll ever be siblings in the way that word is supposed to mean. But she's shown me something I hadn't expected, growth. And maybe that's enough. Maybe we don't need dramatic reconciliations or some perfect fairy tale ending. Maybe showing up differently, consistently, is the real version of healing. It took me a long time to get here. Years of pain, hundreds of dollars lost, and a total breakdown of everything I thought family meant. But here I am. Whole. Not perfect. Not repaired. Just whole. So if you're reading this, wondering if cutting ties makes you a bad person, wondering if you're allowed to choose peace over obligation, this is your sign. You're allowed to stop bleeding for people who hand you the knife. You're allowed to leave. You're allowed to start over. And you're allowed to thrive without them. I did. And I'm never going back.